Suriname is the country which might host the largest deposits and the best opportunity.
We have a better understanding of what's going on. There is some data and quite an enormous trend that we've identified, which is in the order of 10 kilometers long.
Since the LiDAR came back, we've obviously found some parallel structures which might change the story quite a bit.
Similar pits like this, mined in the early 2000s by artisanal miners have become pits like the Rosabelle and the Merian pit, operated by majors Zijin and Newmont.
If we can deliver what we think we can deliver, there should be quite some upside for the current investors.
All right, today we're having a chat with Oscar Louzada, the CEO, and Rayiez Bhoelan, a leading geologist for SRAN.NE Gold, which is a highly interesting gold exploration firm in Suriname who is following the successful footsteps of both Miata Metals and Founders Metals before them. Thanks for swinging by, gentlemen. Perhaps we can start off with you, Oscar, to really lay the groundwork of what SRAN.NE Gold is all about before we go to Rayiez and his geology.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you for that, Stein. So we've been active in Suriname for quite some time. The oldest member of the team has been in Suriname for 26 years. I've been here for 13 years. Rayiez, Surinamese geologist, educated in Suriname. This is not our first project in Suriname. We've been working on various other ideas. One of those ideas has listed a couple of years ago, which was then restarted, which has become Miata, which is looking like a very decent success. It took a little while to find the Tapanahoni project. There's so much to do in Suriname. It's so underexplored. The relationships that we've built over the last 13 years, or in Dennis's case, 26 years, have given us a very large pool of concessions to look at, to evaluate. Somewhere mid last year, we decided that the Tapanahoni project is the one to go for. We set up a new company, got some pretty decent financial backing from Canadian investors, but also Dutch investors, and surprisingly some UK investors. So Suriname, obviously, because of Founders and Miata and Greenheart, it's getting crowded now. It's got its day in the sun. We're obviously benefiting from that, like all the others are. I think with the previous work done by IamGold on Tapanahoni and all the artisanal workings on site, that this could very well be something that is pretty similar to the other listed companies in Suriname. Sorry, listed in Canada that operate in Suriname. When we started 13 years ago with our first project, we got to Suriname basically on the back of a Surinamese professor called Theo Wong, who taught at the TU Delft, but also the University of Paramaribo. And instead of following, all the other explorers to go to Canada or go to Kazakhstan or Uzbekistan back then, we thought Suriname is the country which might host the largest deposits and the best opportunity. So luckily, through Theo Wong, Professor Theo Wong, we got in touch with our previous concession holder, did a deal, financed it privately. That's now a listed company, and we've done exactly the same with SRAN.NE.
It's definitely a very interesting backstory there, and also a great time to be exploring gold in Suriname, like you outlined with Miata Metals and Founders Metals. Truly great successes there already. Rayiez, would love to include you in the conversation here. Take us along. What is really geology about? What is really what you're targeting currently? I know you are financed for a drill campaign. What are we looking at? What are the plans? And what is the target?
We are looking at, Tapanahoni is well situated in one of the oldest areas within the Greenstone Belt here. As you know, this is a tropical country. We have a lot of saprolite to deal with. So our biggest challenge is to understand that and read through the targets. Of course, the artisanal miners are our first targets. They're the ones, an old friend once told me the best pathfinder for gold is gold. So that's the first thing we look at. So you have to be in the right terrain and to understand what to sample to give you your best representation of what's mineralized in the subsurface. And Tapanahoni has seen some work done already. So we are trying to build on that and take it further. We've also recently acquired some LiDAR data, which we will use to supplement our efforts. It's not just topography, but it's telling us more about the geology. And Suriname, the Greenstone Belt in general, the mineralization is highly controlled by geological structures, which are very complex, to say the least. We are getting a bit more skilled and better skilled at reading through that and understanding how the mineralization is controlled. Just finding gold or having indications of gold is one thing, but to properly drill it and bringing it up to that confidence where, people want to invest in it, it's a different story and needs a lot of work, needs a lot of expert eyes. So, the approach is first to go on the ground and understand what we're seeing and extrapolate that, going at depth and hopefully soon placing, the right drill holes. We're excited for that.
Yeah, placing the right drill is of course key in this story.
Yes.
But of course, a small background for the viewers at home, there is artisanal mining on this project as we speak, meaning there are people currently there working, finding gold. And you also have some pictures that you brought along of samples you just have laying around with visible gold in them. Perhaps you can explain to us how we can use that, as well as the lighter information you have, to really delineate where to start looking. How do you prove up that you have the gold deeper in the ground as well?
Well, these are some samples that were taken back from some of the artisanal miners there. When we look at it, we see that there's a lot of free gold, in fractures, as you can see in these quartz veins. The advantage that we have at Tapanahoni is that there's some previous work been done. And mind you, the greenstone belt in Suriname is littered basically with artisanal mining going around everywhere, right? Whenever there is some exposure, by exposure I mean when these artisanal miners they dig holes and you see the bedrock like we see here, we have a better understanding of what's going on. There is some data and quite an enormous trend that we've identified, which is in the order of 10 kilometers long, and there might be parallel trends to that. So within this window, we know that something is up because we see the mining. We've seen some mapping and sampling of some of the rocks down there. So we understand there is a zone that we need to be focused on. Even within the zone, we need to find the right domains, the right things to sample. The overburden, with overburden I mean the saprolitic cover that we have here because it's a tropical climate. Is very complex, and sometimes it has a very complex weathering history. So you have overprinting, and we need to be aware of that when we sample.
And Rayiez, sorry to jump in real quickly, but that top layer you're referring to, how deep is that roughly for the viewers at home to visualize?
At Tapanahoni, it can be in the order of between 40 and 60 meters. There is other places in Suriname where it can go well beyond 200 meters. The great thing about the saprolite is that if you have strong mineralization in there, it's really easy to mine.
And that's really what artisanal miners are doing, right?
Artisanal miners usually start off in valleys or creeks, and they can work their way up into, I guess, the root of the mineralization, which is in the bedrock. So they start and they go after the saprolite. To some extent, they even go after the harder rocks, but they are quite limited by the technology they use. Yeah, so that's basically what you're showing there is our corridor, our focus corridor, which we think is a structurally complex area that has shown, gold mining, active gold mining. And we will try to go in there and map out and tune out, the finer details. So we have the optimal placement of drill holes that gives us our best chance to understand what's going on and to prove mineralization in the area.
Yeah, thank you, Rayiez, for that overview. And if I understand it correctly, Oscar, there has already been some drilling on your tenements, on your project by IamGold, I believe.
Yes, that's correct. They drilled 4,000 meters in Rayiez 2012, wasn't it? Yeah, exactly. So 4,000 meters has been drilled. We mentioned a couple of those holes in the presentation, and that first go basically shows a pretty decent mineralized system, or potentially mineralized system. So what we're going to do with the initial program is close the spacing on those drill holes. So I think the current spacing is about 200 meters. We'll try and drop them back to about 25 meters or so, which would give us a really decent understanding of what they found, or what they at least were trying to chase. And as you can see here, the meters are reasonable, the grams are good. If there's a continuation of this, then we're obviously onto something.
Yeah, great for that overview, thanks. And aside from artisanal mining, there's also a pretty seriously sized pit, I believe, on your project that's also part of this SRAN.NE target. Perhaps you can take us along what happened there and what are we looking at there?
Yeah, this is what we call the Randy's Pit, in honor of a driller that is no longer with us, for a company called Corp that drilled did the drilling for IamGold back in the day. So this is almost stained. This is almost 30-40 meters really steep pit, which has been mined very irresponsibly by some of the small scale miners. You can see an excavator there for scale. The other thing is the small scale miners, they have an efficiency around 30-40%. That's how much they recover from the material. So to go through all that trouble and digging a considerable hole of almost 70 meters long, 50 meters wide, 30 to 40 meters deep, all the way in the interior of Suriname, where the logistics are quite challenging, just testifies to the potential that's hiding there. And on the other side, at the Puketi, which is kind of close to the floodplains of the Tapanahoni River, there is less saprolite because of erosion. It is close to the river, so it's an old surface that probably has less overburden on it. They've gone and mined into what we call transitional rock. They were after those quartz. The photos that you showed of the quartz boulders, the quartz blocks from veins that has these free gold in fractures. In geological terms, it's too close, so it's a similar system. It crosses the Tapanahoni River, and it's this focus corridor that has potentials in the order of 5 to 10 kilometers that we are targeting. We're also looking at potential parallel zones along this trend. So to give more context, close by to the west, there is what we call a granitic rock. There's a big granitic batholith. In many other projects in Suriname, in the Roosevelt district, in Oko, in Guyana, in Antino, you see that the proximity to these intrusive rocks is very important and has proven to be very important. So if you are close within what we call the volcano sedimentary belt, the greenstone belt, you're in a highly prospective zone. So we know we're looking in the right spot. So that shows us that there is a potential for a large system there. So similar mines, similar pits like this, mined in the early 2000s in the 90s by artisanal miners have become pits like the Rosabelle and the Merian pit, operated by majors Zijin and Newmont.
Great, thank you, Rayiez. And to really try to summarize that and visualize this is of course a cross section of the SRAN.NE target that we're looking at here. And in red, you've painted in what you suspect might be mineralization, of course, what needs to be tested. And basically, to try to summarize this mineralization might run across your entire 5 to 10 kilometer strike length. It's there at the SRAN.NE target. You're gonna try to step out from there across that strike length to really test how big the system could be. Is that correct?
Yes, correct. Yeah, that's the idea.
Yeah.
Very simplified.
Yeah, and we're seeing quite interesting grades here as well. If you look at the previous drill work, they're in the 50 gram meters, which is a function of just multiplying the grams per ton times the meters drilled for the viewers at home. So the 50 meters gram meters and above. So we could be talking about quite a big target here.
Oh yeah, they barely scratched the surface, right?
And I guess that's a great part of the symbiosis with artisanal miners. They basically help you really visualize where the ore is and show you where the mineralization runs. And they stop when it starts to become interesting for a large-scale mining company.
That's often the case, yeah. They're quite limited by one, mining practices, and also the technology to be able to process harder material.
Perhaps we can transition quickly to timelines, and please both answer whenever, whoever thinks that can answer best. I believe you have multiple phases for your drilling campaign. What should we be looking at timelines-wise? When will the first drill bit start spinning, and all the other catalysts that are exciting for a potential investor?
Yeah, so we do need to do a bit of work on site still. Rayiez and his team are going out to site again tomorrow. We need to make some modifications on camp. We were in Suriname last week to meet with the driller. We've acquired two drills that are being sent from Canada down to Suriname. They are currently in Houston waiting for a boat to pick them up. So they should be arriving in Suriname somewhere the first week of May. And then it'll probably take 1 to 2 weeks to get them to site. Rayiez touched on the difficulties of mining in the jungle. Luckily, our location is quite favorable. We're on the river. One target is on the north side. The other target is on the other side of the river. We've got a landing strip on our site, which is good. We met with the guy that operates the local airline, who is happy to take us there. He's got, I think, Rayiez, he operates 15 aircraft, I think, in country. He's got a sky truck that can use or can lift heavy equipment. He's got a couple of twin otters. So there's plenty of ways to get to site without much problem. So coming back to the drills, it'll take a week or two to get them to site. Then Rayiez and his guys will probably need, I don't know, Rayiez, a couple of weeks to start mapping and getting the targets in.
Very interesting, gentlemen. Of course, you referenced buying the drill rigs, which is quite different than the most junior mining companies that lease them or rent them.
Yeah.
And perhaps we
Yeah.
can also talk about the cost associated to that from now on, at least the cost benefit of that.
Yeah.
That seems to be quite a boon for future drilling costs.
Absolutely. It's so you drop the costs. We need to run some numbers, obviously, but it's going to be in the low hundreds of dollars per meter. We got a lab in Suriname, which has a really quick turnaround, 7 to 10 days on samples. That cost is minimal. The meter cost will be 125, 150 maybe, which is significantly lower than getting a contractor in, obviously. Yeah, so the guy that's going to start drilling for us is someone who's worked in Suriname before, so he knows the rock quite well, and he's got his whole team ready to go for when he gets there, somewhere towards the end of May.
Great, thank you, gentlemen. We need to talk about Suriname for a bit, of course. Perhaps first a question quickly for you, Rayiez. Perhaps you can take us along. Why is there such a gold rush to explore and mine gold in Suriname now? I know it's part of the Guyana Shield. Of course, Guyana has been very successful in recent times for exploration. But really, why is Suriname so hot right now?
We've had a long history of gold mining. Back in the days, it was done by artisanal miners. Since the 80s, there have been different groups, primarily Canadian groups, coming in and doing exploration. One of the most notable ones was Golden Star. In the 90s, they did tremendous work. And, after the Omai pit in Guyana, we have developed two major mines in Suriname. One was the Roosevelt that was previously owned by IamGold and now by Zijin. And you have the Marian for the last years, operated by Newmont. Suriname is also, we have the right geology, I would say, for one. The other thing is that the exploration projects are not that remote, right? In terms of the difficulty of logistics, right? Like Oscar pointed out too, from Paramaribo, within most projects are within a reach of less than 100 miles. So that's one thing. We are relatively a peaceful country, so that adds to it. You won't get mugged easily in Paramaribo. There has been some financial instability, but the country is quite stable, quite peaceful, and quite accommodating to different people from all around the world. We're a multi-ethnic country, so we know how to get along with people that differ from us ourselves. So I think that's one of why Suriname is that attractive.
Great, thanks for that overview there. And Oscar, we have been talking a lot behind the scenes also about the importance of having such a local team in Suriname. Of course, full disclosure for the viewers at home, I do own some stock in Sranan Gold, so we're biased here. But perhaps you can take us along. Why is that so important, and who in your team really has that local expertise?
Yeah, it's important indeed. I got in touch with Dennis Lapointe about 13 years ago. I was introduced by an English investor in our back then story. And he said, look, if you're going to Suriname, you must meet with Dennis Lapointe. So we flew over to meet with him. Dennis was then already in Suriname for about 13 years or so. He was sent to Suriname by Alcoa to do some work. And so we met this American geologist who was then not lost anymore in Suriname because he already had quite a decent track record. So whichever project you look at now, or whichever concession holder you speak to in Suriname, they all know Dennis Lapointe. Every 43101 written in country was done by this man. All the more junior geologists in country are all trained by Dennis. So he's a great source of projects, but also knowledge, technical knowledge, and also his crew are mostly, I think 99% local. There's one French chap who's come into the country, I think through him, but the rest are all local geologists, and especially with we got local communities on our project. It's important to have local communities involved, and if you've got local geologists working there, that's obviously a huge benefit. The last dinner we had when we were in Suriname last Saturday, one of the guys that is part of our team comes from that area. So whatever gets lost, I speak Dutch, obviously. Was born in the Netherlands, but even talking Dutch, for a local community in the bush, Dutch is not the easiest language to speak. And this guy took over from me, translating it in their local language, which obviously helped. Yeah. So another exciting thing about Suriname is that the country officially produces maybe about 600,000 ounces a year, but coming from both Newmont and Zijin, or now Zijin. Unofficially, this country produces a ton of gold per month. Those are vast, vast numbers that are all being, taken out of the country, and there's no control over it. But that tells you a little bit about how wealthy this country is, and the vast resources that are there. Every community in the bush has an open pit. It is so impressive to see. At some point, you'll have to come over to site and see at least what we're doing.
Definitely fascinating. Thanks for taking us along there as well. Last main topic I'd quickly like to highlight is currently the cap table, the finances, really the numbers behind the scenes. You seem to be financed currently. I believe you raised 3.2 million Canadian dollars recently.
Yeah.
Really,
Yeah.
how far will it take you, and how many meters do you think we can drill with that budget?
So because we own the drills, that's going to be very beneficial. The first idea is to do 1,500 to 3,500 meters, and that's on the known targets. But since the LiDAR came back, we've obviously found some parallel structures, which might change the story quite a bit. So we need to revisit that with Rayiez, Dennis, and his team to see what we can do with the leftover money we have. So we closed the financing in December, raised 3.2 million. We got some pretty decent backing from one particular group in Edmonton. The Metals Group got backing from a large institution in Toronto, and the rest is all smaller institutions that obviously have made some money on the previous stories in Suriname. How long will it last us? Leftover money? We can easily do 1,500 to 3,500 meters, unless Dennis and Rayiez come back next week and say, look, we need to do 10,000 meters immediately.
Great overview there, and of course, parallel trends would be the holy grail. Great that you touch base again on that. That the potential through that LiDAR data might actually be there.
Yeah.
You also have a
Yeah.
very small float currently outstanding, 39 million shares fully diluted, and with the current share price of about
Yeah.
35 cents Canadian, that is about a 12 to 13 million Canadian dollar market cap currently.
Yeah, it's negligible. Yeah, exactly. So if we can deliver what we think we can deliver, there should be quite some upside for the current investors, and for management too. Obviously, we're very much engaged and incentivized. The free float is also negligible. I don't think that much of the stock. I think out of the 38 million, maybe 15 million shares are not held with us and or people associated to our investors.
Great. Then to really end off this interview, perhaps we can quickly recap how the next couple of months will look, what the big catalysts to look out for are, and those great numbers.
So the team is going out in the field again. We're going to start building a proper camp, so to accommodate the drillers that will be coming over in the next 2 to 4 weeks. That should give the guys in the field enough time to generate enough work for the driller to actually start getting the drills into the ground. So there should be news flow coming after a couple of months of silence, or almost silence. Hopefully the next, April, so the next 6 months will be decent news flow, and hopefully decent width and decent grade.
Decent width and decent grades, always the hope. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for your time. Really appreciate it.